Jay, Bradley, Raj, thank you for being here. Okay, so we were kicking off this conversation with look at mobile voting. Raj, we had kicked things over to you, if you would not mind basically repeating what you were saying.
Of course. So what I'm saying is that, look, I admire Bradley very much for being a policy entrepreneur on this. It's not an easy fight, but he's gotten out there and he's obviously very well known on it. One is that I was mentioning I have sort of an accidental expertise. I've been doing election law in some form or the other for 25 years. When I was a young lawyer, a public interest lawyer, I was with a bunch of voting rights lawyers. So I was in Florida after the recount of 2000, helping doing the Florida Election Reform Act. Then I ended up at a think tank and I was doing voting rights there. I became elected. I had a big problem at a polling place. So I've been through a lot of this stuff. And I think I agree, obviously, with a lot of what Bradley's saying around, of course, if you get more people in the process, there's an old famous Bill Clinton adage that Bradley will remember, which is that is actually perhaps no longer true, but it used to be the Democrats win by addition and Republicans win by subtraction. And so that was a very binary dialectic, which was to say, well, they want to restrict the franchise because then they win that way. Again, we're not so sure that works in the era of Trump. But Bradley's point to me is fundamentally right, which is you just want more people in the process. And I like his point about meeting people where they are. We all move our money through these phones. Our life savings are in bank accounts that we access on this phone. Our health records are on these phones. Everything that we hold dear is on these phones. So the concept that we can't at least explore and test technology that could have voting, I mean, the implications are massive. I mean, imagine all these people who are, quote, disaffected, if they could go to an app and vote. I mean, turnout would be absolutely, would skyrocket, even for the presidential. I mean, what was turnout in this?
By 65.
70. Okay, yeah.
65, yeah.
50, yeah. Hold on. So what was that, Bradley? 55?
65 was the presidential.
That's the percentage of eligible voters who voted.
Yes. Which, by the way, is like 7-8x more than normal for every other race. Yeah, so it's funny. Sure. I'm watching both of you. You're like thinking like, this should be better than that, right? That was sort of JD's reaction.
Of course.
But I'm thinking like, wow, it's amazing. Because like city council is 6%. So like, 6%. It's all relative.
Yeah, no, and look, I'll tell you this as well. I mean, yes, it's the local races and so on, but you would also have this, like, I think this huge externality that comes, which is once people saw, there's a little bit of a gamification factor that goes on. Why is, sports in the NFL is because all this betting that's going on. Everyone's like, doing their prop bets and so on. If you actually had more interaction with the voting process, I guarantee you'll have more interaction with democracy, knowledge, getting briefed on things. I think it could have a wonderful effect. And we, of course, need to look at the security. I mean, Bradley, you and I know that the current election system is not as hackable as the conspiracy theorists on both sides think, because it's decentralized, it's precinct by precinct, it's county by county, different machines and so on. But we also know it's not perfect. There's not a 0% error rate in anything, but anything, it's good we're talking tech here. You'll like this, Bradley, I think this analogy, which is, I don't know if you guys are tennis fans, but at the US Open, like when I grew up, there was like line judges, and it was very important. They'd say in, out, and then the machine came, and now they gamified it, and the machine knows instantly if you look at the umpire, it's green or red. But they do this whole thing where they do all this little drama and you clap to say, did the ball land in or out? And so, and they're doing that because whenever there's technological change, you have to prime the recipient of it. When telephones started, there was dead air. That's why they put that signal noise that we know from as a kid from old landline phones. So long story short is technological change takes time. People have to get comfortable with it. It's great you're doing it.
Let's stay with this for 1 second. Go ahead, Bradley.
I would say, Jay, if it's okay, maybe I can just explain really fast how it works, because I think that I assume, because look, the only legitimate reason to object to mobile voting would be that you don't think it's secure. There are a lot of people who will object because they will say, to at least to themselves, hey, I have power in the current system. I don't want to risk losing that power. And that's the status quo. But, we'll use Raj as the example. So Raj, who I know is a New York City resident, would go on the App Store. He would download the New York City Board of Elections app. And the first thing he would say is, okay, is Raj a registered voter here in New York City? So you would put in your information. Yes, he is. next question, is Raj really Raj? So the first thing they would do is multi-factor authentication. So that's like when you forget your Google password, they send you a code, you put it in the app. Second thing would be facial recognition. So it's like Clear at the airport. They take a scan of Raj's face and then they match it up against some sort of ID that he has and says, okay, this is really him. Ballot pops up on his screen. He goes through it. The idea is to make it as simple and easy as possible. He's made his choices. He's double checked it. When he hits submit, two things happen. One, the ballot's immediately encrypted. Two, he gets a tracking code, like if it were a FedEx package, he can track the progress of his ballot throughout the process. It goes back to the Board of Elections and they air gap it, which means they take it offline. Once your ballot is no longer connected to the internet, then they decrypt it. Then a paper copy prints out. That paper copy gets mixed in with all of the other ballots. Raj knows where his ballot stands because through the tracking code, he can see that it was sent, received, tabulated, printed, and so on. And the underlying code itself is all open source, which means anyone can audit it, anyone can check it. And so
Don't understand is that there's often, particularly in a presidential and battleground states, there's monitors, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people remember from the Florida recount, there's always a D and an R that are looking at the ballot. So is there a concept of how, because I think skeptics will say at that moment when Raj says, I'm Raj, can there be hanky-panky on that authentication phase? And is there any way to have, because, I've been there with the old days of the carbon triplicate paper. Literally say Bradley Tusk, okay, but and then we go like this, and it's a very analog process, but at least that gives us comfort. Anything there?
yeah, I mean, like fundamentally, you just can't get into the system. The ballot doesn't even appear to you unless your your face is matched up through facial recognition against your driver's license. So, look, the other day, or a couple months ago now, when my voting book came out, I was at a book signing in DC, and I'm signing the book. And it hits me in New York to vote. That's the security requirement, signing your name. And I was like, what I'm doing right now in signing my book is the equivalent of the entire security apparatus in New York City. Whereas with mobile voting, you've got end-to-end encryption, end-to-end verification, multi-factor authentication, air gapping, it's not connected to the internet, facial recognition screening. And because it's open source, it can be audited. And the reason that we built this out of my foundation, and I've put $20 million of my own money philanthropically into this, is so that it is totally open source so that anyone can audit it, anyone can check it, because you're right. Otherwise, it's hard to have confidence in it. And look, the election companies, and I understand this, they're in business. They don't want to spend millions of dollars building code that then they just give away. So they keep it closed end. And I get that. But for anyone to have confidence in the results here, it needs to be open source. So that's why we built it this way.
Yeah.
So first of all, can I just state the obvious to if you don't mind me saying, Bradley, I mean this with the highest degree of respect possible. To be able to say I put up $20 million in my own money is the single greatest flex that has ever been uttered on the show.
Thank you.
Man, do I welcome it. That is absolutely so awesome because I have no idea how to relate to that. But that is cool, and that's why you're here, large in part for that sort of perspective. I will just say that, President Trump has proposed what he calls a four-part solution. I think is kind of a solution in search of a problem to a large degree. But Trump wants the U.S. to switch exclusively to paper ballots, require proof of citizenship to register, require voters show ID at the polls. He reiterated that today in the Oval Office, and eliminate mail-in voting by holding the entire election in person in just one day. Raj, go ahead on this here before we take our first break.
Yeah, so the problem is you never know, like everything Trump, on like what hour or what minute you're on. So you know that they won the election largely on mail-in ballots. So if you read, there was a lot of deep stories reporting Trump would go off and say this kind of hullabaloo, and then the RNC and the state parties were like, absolutely, particularly in red states, Bradley knows this well, you want to get out your vote. So they were actually using mail-in ballots all the time. So the Republican Party isn't even lockstep between their leader, the president, and what they're actually doing on the ground. So I think this is just more sort of like red meat to the base on this paper ballot stuff. It obviously makes no sense to not have convenience voting. It gets back to that Clinton line about sort of there is probably a notion that he wants less people to vote, but in this case, I don't even think his own party is with him.
That's a wild claim. I'm going to think about that Bill Clinton line a lot. We're going to come back to this in just a second. Guys, hang out. Bradley, Raj, we'll be right back with them. Let's hear from our sponsors because we love keeping the lights on in this place and
that helps.
A hot lunch, and they pay the bills. And we love keeping the computer on when things don't crash, for sure. And that's because of our wonderful sponsor. We hear from them now. Folks, if you're serious about investing, you got to know about public.com. You can invest in everything: stocks, treasuries, options, crypto, at least the legit stuff. They even offer some of the highest yields in the industry, like more than a 6% yield you can currently get with their bond account. Stays locked in even as the Fed continues to cut interest rates. Maybe we're in for 25 basis points more in 2025. You don't have to worry about that so much with that type of account. It's no wonder the folks over at NerdWallet say Public earns high marks for ease of use and investment selection. What sets Public apart is how they give you the tools you need to make informed investment decisions. They have a built-in AI tool called Alpha. You can ask it any question about any stock, receive earnings calls, breakdowns the minute that the calls are over, and you can better understand why a stock is moving, not just that it's moving. You can actually understand what's driving the performance of your portfolio. Investing for those who take it seriously, public.com/CT to learn more, or go ahead and scan that code because our producers made it, and we really don't want that graphic to go to waste, and that'd be awesome if you could sign up. We love Public. Thank you so much. All right, Bradley, Raj, back at it. So it's actually not a far departure from the conversation we were just having. I do want to, and I'm going to start with Bradley here on the Doge. We could do like a 3-hour special just on like the dizzying array of stuff that has come out. But among the latest headlines recently, Doge's power expands as federal agencies start planning large-scale layoffs. Agency leaders have been told to prepare for large-scale layoffs. 14 states, as of just a few hours ago, Bradley, now suing Doge. They are blasting Elon Musk's, quote, unprecedented power as unconstitutional. The lawsuit says there's no greater threat to democracy than the accumulation of state power in the hands of a single, unelected individual. Bradley, as you've looked at this story, I wonder, are there certain agencies you think can expect mass layoffs or can expect to be targeted more? And I also wonder, Bradley, as you look at this story, how far is too far?
Yeah, I mean, I will say, look, I'm an independent at this point, but I worked for Democratic politicians for a long time. And yet I believe that you could make the federal government a lot more efficient. So I used to be the deputy governor of Illinois, and through attrition and early retirement packages, we reduced the state workforce by about 20% and didn't fill most of those jobs. We filled the essential jobs, but nothing else. And that allowed us to take those savings and put them back into education and healthcare and public safety and not have to raise taxes. And that worked really well. And look, I've worked in the federal government, I've worked in the Senate. So if you said to me, could you make the federal government 20% smaller and probably see no real impact on constituents? I think the answer is probably yes. So I don't necessarily have a problem with it. But you've got to make those choices based on, hey, where do we have too many people? Where do we have sort of poor results? And as a result, the team we have isn't working, as opposed to just either totally without any real thought whatsoever, or just based on trying to purge people who you think don't share the president's ideology. And so, like, I think the Democrats are dumb to sit there and defend the bureaucracy, because I don't think any American, says, oh yeah, I love the federal government the way it is. But at the same time, the way they're doing it obviously isn't all that thoughtful. And look, this is the paradox of Elon, right? I used to work with Elon, with Tesla. And the trick with him, or the challenge, is 50% of what he says is absolutely brilliant and visionary. 50% is total bullshit. And no one knows which 50 is 50, including him, right? And so as a result, there are things in Doge that could be great. We could make the federal government smaller and make it more effective for the taxpayers. We could take all kinds of technology like AI for procurement or licensure or rulemaking or permitting and make government far more responsive and honest and cost effective. There's a lot you can do. And there's also a tremendous amount of damage you can do. And he's sort of everything all at once, at the same time. And so it's all good and bad wrapped together.
I mean, it sounds like a match made in heaven to me, Raj, because if you just blanked out the name Elon Musk in that last response from Bradley, you can kind of sit there and be like, all right, which guy are you talking? Are you talking about Musk, or are you talking about Donald Trump? Because this is like the ultimate fog of war. We're throwing so much shit out there, so much spaghetti at the wall. We're seeing what sticks, what doesn't. And people who are tracking this stuff, like this is like 10 people's full-time jobs just to track every executive order. Musk says, Raj, over to you, This was the mandate. He stood there in the Oval Office the other day with a kid next to the Resolute desk. Like, this is the mandate. Trump wins 7 for 7 in the swing states. And as much as we, can try and parse through, whether he should, where he shouldn't, you make a big deal if he's unelected. I still come back to the realization of like, Trump won all these states. Like, does he get a right to do this? Raj, what do you think?
Part of them behind. Yeah. So, are we listening to Musk here?
Yeah, hold on one second, Raj. Yeah. I'm hearing Elon Musk's voice in the background. Do we have something we want to play?
You know what? That's my bad. Yeah.
No, we can play it. Yeah, fuck it. Let's play it. Yeah, we're doing it live. All right, here's Elon Musk. Let's listen.
We do need to delete entire agencies as opposed to leave part of them behind. Because if you leave part of them behind, it's easy. It's kind of like leaving a weed. If you don't remove the roots of the weed, then it's easy for the weed to grow back. But if you remove the roots of the weed, it doesn't stop weeds from ever growing back, but it makes it harder. So yeah,
this is madness. So I guess a few points. One is I think Bradley's take on Musk is well stated. I haven't worked with Elon directly, but certainly know a lot of folks who have. But here's the exact point, which is Musk has it exactly wrong. That is not at all what elected Donald Trump. Donald Trump said, I'm going to drop prices on day one. I'm going to bring to close 2 wars before I'm even inaugurated. He said, I'm going to do all these things. He never said, I'm going to go around and have this guy who has no real clue about government and say, hey, except for the fact when he buck rakes off of it, and I'm going to go around and have him just do whatever the hell he wants. I mean, to Bradley's great observation, which is 50% is nuts and total bullshit. Maybe it's even a higher percentage. 50% is brilliant. We are not guinea pigs for Elon Musk's messianic complex. I mean, do you hear the bullshit that comes out of his mouth? You know what he literally said, which is, if it's a SpaceX contract, it must be good. Must be good. Must be good for the taxpayers. So now, and of course, Trump won the election. And so to this point about the constitutionality, he's got to follow the rules of how you cut. But to be fair, Donald Trump can designate, if it's done under his name or someone else's. I think it's a little bit of a secondary point. The point is you got to follow these rules. And let's look at what he's actually doing. So I love the bait and switch on this. I actually did a little bit of research, and I went and I grabbed all the public stories I could find of all the examples that Carolyn Levitt and Musk gave of the excess bad spending. At AID, the most I could come up with was about $50 million. For 3 weeks, these guys have been going nuts on it. It was $50 million. That's like the coffee budget out of a $40 billion budget. So you have to ask yourself logically, what the hell is going on here? They're actually hiding the ball on what these agencies are doing. So you can go to a village in Africa and you can tell those people to their face, we're going to let you die. Because we made a commitment as a country after the war that we liked America doing good things in the world because it saved lives and it was better for the American taxpayer. It actually costs us less money to be good to the world because people like America, they want to come to America, and they won't want to come to China. So now under this doctrine, as far as I can tell, Elon Musk is having a fun time. He doesn't give a damn. He's the richest guy in the world. He's completely in his own world. And now he's going around making decisions that are going to hurt everyday Americans. So that's the problem with this thing, which is it's a complete sideshow. And it's not what the American people voted for. And by the way, if you look at the polling numbers, Musk is dropping like a stone. So he's having a ball. What the hell?
Wait, hold on. Let me pop in. What do you mean? Like Musk's personal approval rating? I haven't seen that. I trust you. I'm just asking if that's what you mean.
Yeah, that's right. Just to clarify, I'm talking about Musk's personal approval ratings. Trump, by the way, his personal approval ratings have held steady, if not increased. I think in the dynamics, by the way, Bradley, I'd love your view on this. I think Trump is laughing all the way to the bank. He's got Musk around.
I was going to
you know what's interesting, and I'll kick it over to Bradley. But I always thought, because we got 2 market savvy guys, that's just fun. We get to talk markets a little bit. I get to talk markets a lot on the show. I've always viewed Tesla's stock as a publicly traded approval rating in real time for Elon Musk, because it really is, right? Sure. It's like one of those, like, obviously Magnificent Seven, great, heavily consolidated in the S&P 500, awesome, but it's a proxy for Musk support.
Yeah.
Tesla, for whatever it's worth, is, I wouldn't guess this, but it is down 6% from the start of the year. Bradley, your thoughts?
Yeah, a few things. So I totally agree with Raj, which is Trump is letting Musk be the bad guy, right? Trump is letting Musk do all the damage, take all the hits, and then whenever Musk needs to be useful, Trump's going to get rid of him. right?
No question.
And Musk doesn't seem to see any of this coming. And look, but overall, Elon's genius, there's two things, right? One is he does make truly good cars, space rockets, satellites, like that's all totally true, and you can't take that away from him. But really what it is he's the master of pixie dust, right? He manages to take a car company that, probably is worth 80 or 100 billion dollars and gets to a market cap of 700 billion or more, purely by having this persona on Twitter, having this persona online, everything else. And that attracts all these retail investors, and retail investors can prop a stock up forever. And that's what happened. The single best way for Elon Musk to make money is the perception that he has all of this power. And so the reason he is constantly tethered to Donald Trump is that does a lot more for Tesla stock or the SpaceX valuation or anything else he owns than their actual performance. And so, that's why he's doing this. But at the same time, I don't think he realizes, like Raj says, that he's being treated and used as a useful idiot here.
I think those are great points. I might just a friendly amendment to that, which is, yeah, you've got a lot of retail investors in Tesla, no doubt, but you have a lot of institutional investors that are buying this pixie dust. And I would actually say, JD, you want to talk about markets. This to me is a market failure of sorts, because this is when the average person looks at Wall Street and goes, what the hell are you guys smoking? I mean, look at the Twitter valuation. He bought it, at $44 billion. I liked Sam Altman's dig at Elon, in the last few days saying, hey, listen, you want to buy OpenAI? I'll buy Twitter at $9.74 billion, because what's he saying, which is Twitter's value has plummeted if it actually was trading on fundamental metrics that we judge companies on, the way that my company was judged on, and so when I ran my business. So I think that what's actually happening here is this pixie dust thing is really emblematic of a larger problem we have in the current era we're in which we venerate and we valorize these folks. They get incredible media. Every time Elon Musk sneezes, it's on the front page of every media. And I don't think he's really getting scrutinized. And so when you actually peel it back, to Bradley's point, there's a lot of nothing there. And the federal government and our country is really not a guinea pig for what Musk thinks is funny today. Look at the $400 million contract Marco Rubio, said he's going to buy these Tesla trucks, maybe good trucks. I've heard different, some people have different views on their quality. I think I heard today they suspended that order because they actually got some scrutiny and they realized it was bullshit. So I think more and more there's going to be an awakening. The Democrats, I think Bradley would agree, were flat-footed completely on exactly the shock and awe of these first 25 days. And the media, frankly, hasn't really been able, I think, JD, you mentioned, you got 10 people. They're just trying to track what this guy is doing. And I think Susie Wiles and La Savita know exactly what they're doing, which is they're making everyone's head spin. And so Doge has managed to evade any real scrutiny. As I said, it's the bait and switch, and in the crosshairs are real people whose lives are getting hurt.
So first, let me pop in with something seemingly unrelated, though personally important, because that's what you get to do when you're the host of the show.
Yeah.
Bradley, were you drinking a Sanzo? Is that what I saw
you
drinking?
I was a lychee. Have you had the lychee one?
I have. Sanzo was founded by my college roommate, Alessandro Rocco of Villanova University.
Tell him he's doing a really good job. I really like it.
Terrific job. Yeah, he scaled terrifically. He built the brand. He built the brand in Queens with a lot of Asian, South Asian, Filipino influence, and he's crushed it over what's now almost 10 years. And I'm sitting there being like, did I just see Bradley just drink?
Yeah. Tell him great job. I'm a big fan.
What is it? I'm big on these new
sparkling water, but it's just like
yeah.
I'm drinking a lychee one. It's just really delicious.
It's awesome.
It's funny that you say the South Asian thing, JD. I had my first lychee on when I was a kid and was in India, and I thought the only fruits in the world were limited to what we had in the grocery store in Wichita, and then I was like, oh my God, there's all these fruits, and
they don't have lychee in Wichita.
We did not. We did not have lychees in Wichita. And so,
breaking news.
Is it possible now?
Who knows with the way the food supply works? Probably. I mean, maybe Robert Kennedy's against it. But when I was in India, when I first discovered a lychee, I think I had 1,000 in like the first hour.
Damn,
Yeah, they're
I bet they're
delicious.
awesome in that form. So anyway, so that's a brief detour, but it's a personal note of pride because I'm incredibly proud of him and the company and how they've scaled. So I got to shout that out, and we'll do that.
Actually, JD, could ask, is that a New York-based company?
Yeah, well, he lives in Brooklyn now. He started the company in Queens. He was born in
Yeah,
Queens, and he
good for
started
him,
living
man.
in Long Island City. I was there with him. He had the early bottle. He used to like bottle them up all differently and
Where's
slap
the
his own
bottling?
handmade label on them. And I can't speak to the full scale of distribution, but I
Yeah,
get them at my
awesome.
local Whole Foods down on Wall Street, and he's just absolutely crushed it across the board. So,
Love that.
all right, cool. That was fun. So, okay, so back to Doge. Okay, great.
Doge.
So lastly, so Bradley, let me pop over to you with this. Doge, these are now two other headlines. We didn't even talk about these. Doge rips through the education department, cutting contracts, staff, and grants. Again, the argument will be here, well, we could do, this is what the president voted for, this is the mandate. And this says nothing of the work on the CFPB. Richard Cordray, former leader of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, said, it would be as though we were saying to a neighborhood, go ahead and enforce your own laws. We'll withdraw the police. We will not have any kind of enforcement of the law. How big a concern are some of those initiatives out of Elon Musk to you? Is this what the people voted for? We're making too big of a deal.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. I think it's both, right? Which is, of course, there's actions the CFPB takes that protect consumers from egregiously high interest rates or payday loan rates or things like that. And so, yes, you want that. But at the same time, I think you're right, JD. Like Donald Trump, the one thing I would say to his credit, he doesn't hide who he is, right? It's not like he pretended to be one thing and he's another. Like Elon Musk was by his side throughout the campaign. Like all of these things were very much explicitly promised. The American people chose that, I think really foolishly, but they chose it. And so you kind of get what you pay for. And so, look, I'd rather not see these things happen. But at the same time, this is democracy. And when you make a choice without putting any real thought into it, this is what can happen.
Elections have consequences. That's what we say.
Consequences.
So, Raj, you can pick that up. But I also want to get your take on this because I know you tweet about this. And I don't want to get into the I'm not going to get into the whole background with regards to Vice President Vance and Congressman Ro Khanna, but try and boil this one down here the best I can. A 25-year-old who previously worked for SpaceX, he had worked for Elon Musk's other companies, resigned from Doge after the discovery of his old tweets. He was then rehired. Among those tweets was just for the record,
Indian
quote,
hate,
I was racist before it was cool. Normalize Indian hate. Vice President Vance has supported his rehiring, basically making the argument no one should be canceled for an unsavory digital past. Raj, I suspect you feel differently. And what did you make of the back? It was a very public back and forth between Congressman Khanna, a Democrat out of California, and the sitting vice president, all happening on Twitter in front of everyone.
Yeah, and Ro's an old friend of mine, and I think he's been a great leader. He actually has an op-ed in the Times today or tomorrow on the future of the party. Okay, a couple thoughts, which is, JD Vance is obviously bending the knee there, and you never know which JD Vance is a bit of a show is going to show up. I mean, he's evolved. Let's say that diplomatically over the last 5 to 10 years, and so that spat. And if I could if you give me a couple of seconds to widen the aperture, as they say, into the larger Indian American diaspora. So I've been involved. I was one of the first Indian Americans elected in America in 2006, now 1,000 years ago. And I like joke, like back in the day, I'm now almost 50. And Usha Vance, I think, is like 40. But, if she had been exactly my generation, I almost certainly would have known her in some way. And so what's going on now, and I have an essay that I'm working on, and I appreciate you probably read through my tweets, is it's called Peak Brown. What do I mean by that? Which is, I was at the Indian consulate of all things, and there's this great Indian organization I'm part of called Indiaspora. And the Indian American success story is really nuts. I mean, it's hard to even realize it's the most successful immigrant experience, period, in the history of our country. So it's not just, can you imagine that of the 8 principals in this last election, 2 of the 8 were Indian? It's just sort of like, it's just almost crazy to think about. We don't even need to go through the number of Indian American Fortune 100 CEOs, the tens of thousands of doctors now in the arts and so on. So all that is to say, American history is pretty replete with the fact that, we in the Indian American community say, hey, we're just getting started. We're going to go to the next level. But there's also a big history of backlash in American history. And so we've got to be prepared as a diaspora and as a community, which we're not at all right now. That I can assure you, I'm very involved in that. And so now to get to this little fight. So what do you have? You've got Musk and you've got Trump for now backing Musk, and you've got Bannon and you've got a MAGA split. And so they know that they've got a deep part of their base, which actually does want to normalize this Indian hate. It's very clear, this was a whole, if you remember over Christmas time, there was a whole hiccup around this, where it got very ugly very quickly, where it was nominally about H-1Bs. And then all the Twitter feeds were devolving.
Oh, the Vivek, so not to interrupt, you mean the
exactly,
Vivek Ramaswamy?
That's right. Man, and Ramaswamy, to his credit, defended and said, wait a second here, you're calling me smelly? You're saying you're doing all these unbelievably racist things. So it's no doubt, and Musk has said that he's, pro-immigrant. He's an immigrant after all. But the fact that they rehired this guy, obviously this isn't about woke or DEI standards. I mean, I thought the Vance argument was completely pathetic. It was like, it really, for a guy I thought was about accountability and standards, he basically says there is no accountability as long as you're on my team. And essentially he was given orders by Musk, to do as he said. So the fight is ongoing. It's totally fascinating. I think I'm glad Roe got in the mix. I think the fight is going to widen. And we've now, in the last 8 weeks, JD, we've had 2 incidents that were quite prominent on social media where there is this MAGA split of whether or not they're just dirty racists about these things. And we got to call it as it is. So I do think that, maybe weren't, probably aware of how he's going to react to this one, which is there's actually a calling for the Indian American community and the larger, American community to say, listen, we have to defend some core values here because this is some scary shit.
Definitely well said there. Quickly here, Bradley, over to you. What do you just make of Vice President Vance's Silicon Valley smarts experience? What does he bring into the role, or gaps that maybe concern you and say maybe he kind of oversells his Silicon Valley smarts? Because there's clearly something there that got a lot of these tech guys on board.
Yeah, look, I mean, first of all, he's a very smart man. Like, Hillbilly Elegy is a great book, and it felt very profound when he wrote it. Is he a real VC? Kind of, right? Peter Thiel kind of picked a few people who were ideologically aligned with him and said, hey, I'm going to make you somebody. And by the way, Thiel did it, right? He's the one that really helped elect Vance to the Senate. I don't know that Vance is like someone who made a living as a venture capital and put food on his table because of his acumen as a tech investor. But look, overall, a bunch of people in tech did place big bets on Trump, like Musk, like Chamath, like David Sachs, like Vance, and it has paid off for them. I think the question is, I know a lot of these guys from my work in tech, and I think what they kind of miss is they almost live in a world of theory, in that they're all very smart. Like, I went to law school with Sachs, and like they're all, intellectually, very high end, but they've only ever worked in this sort of very narrow world of finance and tech. And as Raj and I both know, because we've both done both of these things, the running a government effectively is exponentially harder than running any company. Right? It is much more complicated. It requires so much more skill. And this notion that everyone who works in government is dumb and lazy and corrupt, and that every regulation is evil and misguided, it's just not true, right? Regulation at the end of the day, and I spent a lot of my time, by the way, fighting off regulation, but nonetheless, it's not inherently good or bad. It's a question of, does it strike the right balance between allowing the private sector to succeed and protecting consumers, right? And there are times where you want to allow the market to really thrive, and there are times you're like, hey, really bad things are happening, we've got to step in, and it could be the same thing. So this will sound like a really weird example, but I was doing the Pacific Coast Highway drive last summer in California, and we were driving from Santa Barbara to LA, and at one point we're on the ocean, and it's beautiful. And, I remember thinking like, okay, it's like this because there were zoning laws put in place that said we're not going to develop commercial stuff right on the water because we want to preserve this for the people of California and tourists like me to enjoy. now fast forward, 70, 80 miles later, I'm in LA and I'm driving through downtown LA and there are tent cities everywhere. And it's the same thing. So those same zoning regulations were then applied poorly because what they actually do in that case is prevent the construction of a lot of affordable housing because they require so much process, community input, environmental impact statements, project labor agreements, all of these things. So even the same regulation on the same issue can be both good and bad depending on the application. And to say that it's all of one or all of the other is just, it's totally idiotic.
Those great points, and I gotta pick that up real quick.
Okay, Raj, if you wouldn't mind trying to keep it short, we got to get our last ad break, but I'll give you the last word here, Raj. Go for it.
Yeah, well, I'll come back to this too, which is, I think to pick up what Bradley said, the concept that the public sector is bad and the private sector is virtuous and efficient, or vice versa, is completely madcap. Bradley knows I sold software into some of the largest Fortune 50 companies in the world, and I will tell you the bloat is enormous. They know it's enormous. So the concept, and anybody who sits there and if the litmus test is it's public, therefore it must be bad, and we should do it like the private sector, go get someone on the phone from Verizon. Go get a human to handle your claim at Verizon. Good luck. You will, you'll pull your hair out. And at the same time, there's a lot of things that obviously, if things aren't going well in government, we should hate inefficiency everywhere. And I think that's what it's picking up on Bradley's great point.
Yeah, no, really well said. All right, Bradley, Raj, hang out 1 second. Let's hear from our sponsor one more time. Folks, speaking of the great wide world of investing, if you're serious about it, or if you're not and you want to be, check out the offerings over at public.com. You can invest in stocks, treasuries, crypto, options, you name it. They got it. Some of the highest yields in the industry, like the more than 6% yield you can currently get with their bond account, stays locked in, even as Jay Powell and his FOMC colleagues do what they do with short-term interest rates this year. What sets Public apart is how they give you all the tools you need to make informed investment decisions, like, for instance, their built-in AI tool called Alpha. I've played with it. It's awesome. I was like, I'm going to take it out for like 5 minutes and play around. Like 20 minutes went by. It is an absolutely awesome tool. Ask it any question about any stock. Receive earnings call breakdown the minute the calls are over. Understand why a stock is moving, not just that a stock is moving. All of this to become a more informed investor, to better understand what's driving the performance of your portfolio. Scan the QR code because it's awesome and it's big and it's right there on your screen. Or just go ahead and open up an account over at public.com/CT, investing for those who take it seriously. All right, Raj and Bradley, we're in the home stretch here now. So this kind of broader, and it's a continuation of what we've been talking about. By the way, shout out to Clint for this comment. It's not about democracy. It's about government looting, the public trough. What else we got here? The inconvenient truth is that the USA is bankrupt due to poor governance, which will become evident as the BRICS force default on the U.S. Any thoughts on BRICS from either of you in particular before I move on with this Sam Altman thing?
I don't know that I understand the comment of BRICS force false in default in the U.S.
Yeah.
I think it's something with regards to I know Trump was talking about the BRICS nations today when he was there with Narendra Modi. He mentioned a little bit.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I a little bit to call back to, I just was on the break there. I was checking my phone, and I just got to call this out, which is Bannon today tweeted or said, he's like, a lot of the MAGA folks are on Medicaid, so don't take the cleaver to Medicaid. That right there is the living example of what Bradley was getting at, which is Musk is just going around like like a chicken with his head cut off, and that dog's just not going to hunt. So I think it's just important for your audience to get that out there. I think generally of what I heard is today Trump, is going to look at every bilateral relationship and try to look at the trade balance and so on. And look, I think the tariff stuff, I got to remind, people that are watching this, Donald Trump pledged on day one, prices would go down. To repeat, day one, prices would go down. Now in the Post today, I'm sure you guys saw this story, they're selling Lucy's, but it's not cigarettes, they're eggs.
Yeah, I saw that.
I mean, the Lucy's, which we all know. Lucy eggs. Oh my God. It was actually an awesome story in the Post, and it's the way they drive coverage well because they've got and I mean it's unbelievable. And so Trump again, Musk is completely out to lunch if he thinks that the American people voted for this chaotic concept of Doge and the bait and switch. Egg prices are up. The wars have hardly, look at what's happening in Gaza. Heartbreakingly, it looks like we're going to be back to war. he's promising all hell is going to break loose. So I just think that, there's a lot of excitement, and the media is having its head spun around with all this activity, the whirling dervish of Trump. But I think they're going to lose, the American people are going to lose patience with this pretty quickly.
10 points for the phrase whirling dervish. That's always welcome.
I
appreciate that one.
Raj tries to work that into every conversation.
It's got Indian roots. Yeah.
I did not. I was today years old when I learned. Okay. I was like, hey, damn, take me to school, man. Obviously, to me, it's not like, obviously, and the same set of like good faith systems applied when Biden was president and before him. I don't think egg prices are so exorbitant because of Donald Trump, but where perception drives reality, and the ultimate showman and the ultimate optics and the ultimate guy who like presents stuff out there. Yeah, I was incredibly disheartened to go to Key Foods. I live in Queens. It's an outer borough. I don't live in Manhattan. And you go to Key Foods, which is for a certain demographic, and it's more commuter zone, and is quite literally between $12 and $14 for 12 eggs. And I was absolutely stunned. I'm like, this isn't Trader Joe's prices. These are people who need eggs in their day-to-day and are going to a place like Key Foods and still, ironically, spending far too much money than you get at a Trader Joe's or something. I'm sure the prices are higher at a Key Food in Queens and deep Brooklyn than they are at Whole Foods and Trader Joe's. And that, to me, just speaks of a fundamentally broken system. Bradley, with the time we have left, I was really interested in this. Sam Altman this week, of course, over at OpenAI, he's crediting Trump for what he calls a vibe shift in Silicon Valley, this idea of a pivot for the industry. Once upon a time, very pro-Obama, all Obama bros, I feel like, out there in Silicon Valley. That is not the case anymore. Speaking to the Tech Times podcast, Altman said the new administration is a breath of fresh air for tech. In some cases, reading now from Fortune, the tech sector's shift to the right has gone beyond politics, begun to infiltrate some of the leading companies' culture and products, most notably at Meta, where Mark Zuckerberg's announced plans to scrap third-party fact-checkers, scale back DEI initiatives, and reintroduce, quote, masculine energy. Seems like the Trump thumbprint is all over Silicon Valley. Bradley, what happened? How did Democrats fumble the bag so badly with big tech to bring us to where we are?
I mean, I think that this kind of gets back to how we started the show with mobile voting, which is whenever the extremes are driving you on either side, you end up alienating the public, right? So I'm pretty confident. I put money right now in whoever the Democratic nominee is for president in 2028, because after 4 years of this, they're going to alienate the country so much that they're going to say, no more of this craziness. We want to go back to someone who seems more logical, which is the same way that Joe Biden got elected in 2020, but it goes both ways, right? And so you had a Democratic Party that is controlled by the far left because primary turnout is so low that all of a sudden, when you have people who appoint themselves the thought police and the language police, and their great joy in life is to sort of feel morally superior to everyone else, you piss people off, right? And they did such a good job of alienating so many people across the board that they created this entirely new coalition for Trump, where Trump had record numbers of African-American voters and Latino voters and young people, simply because people don't like being told all day that they're wrong and they're evil and that they're dumb. And that when you spend all of your time doing that, you lose the thread. And that's what happened here. And so ultimately, that's what led to this. And then the pendulum's now going to swing the other way and back and forth. And the only way we're ever going to get to a point in this country where we can work together again, when we can sort of start to restore faith and trust in institutions like government, is if the two parties actually work together and get things done. And that can only happen if they're not totally terrified of the extremes in their primaries, which means the only solution, in my view, the only scalable solution to fixing democracy is to meet people where they are on their phones, let them participate in the process, move things to the middle, and then we don't have to worry about the pendulum constantly shifting because we're not being controlled by a handful of nuts on both sides.
Raj, finally, you here on this, on the what we call the vibe shift there in Silicon Valley, because we've talked a lot about in the past about like pivot counties and pivot voters, but this is arguably the most important industry in the entire world, which has pretty firmly pivoted. On the one hand, I think like, hey, if you are an investor in Meta, if you are an investor in Alphabet and NVIDIA, any of these companies, I would think you would want your CEO to cozy up to whoever's president. I mean, just like from a basic fiduciary, like, I want my stock to increase in value. But Raj, how did you see this going?
Well, I just want to point out that when I think masculine energy, I think Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, really. I mean, that dude is alpha
He'll
male
kick your
as
ass
much
in
as
a
it
cage
gets.
fight, man. Be
Oh, a cage
careful.
fight, and then he'll put on all that sunscreen and go surfing or hydrofoiling or whatever the hell that thing is. Look, I think there's, and I'll say it, and maybe Bradley will agree with me or not on this one, which is, I lived out there. I've been in tech for a long time. I certainly feel like I fundamentally understand it. This is a finger in the air sort of thing. Right now, they saw what happened with the election. Of course, there was, before the election results, there was obviously a shift among some folks. I don't think it was that significant. Obviously, look at the voting behavior of people out in the valley and so on. Really talking about the very, very, super elite here. But as you just said, JD, it makes business sense. One of the things that Trump said many times that I don't think many things Trump said Democrats didn't take seriously and didn't understand. But one of the best things that he said, I thought for his sake, was when they said, you gave money to Kamala Harris. Like, how you gave money to her? And you know what he says? He goes, of course I did. I was a businessman. I was doing transactions. Mm-hmm. And that's what people can't stand about this system, that it is a transaction-based, the money is just utterly out of control. I mean, the inflation in politics far outstrips inflation in other sectors. And so the reality here, in my view, is that these Valley guys, it's the fad of the moment. Now Trump and Musk are kind of hip when they're going to zig and they're going to zag. And if, as Bradley predicts, which I very much share his view, that I think there's a very good chance that there is a pendulum shift and that Democrats do win in 28. I do want to say quickly on that point, however, it bothers me immensely that if Democrats don't get active and don't get our act together and don't build a new coalition and build a new car, we can't just passively rely on a pendulum shift, because you actually have to create that reality. Right. And right now, of course, there's a lot of work that we Democrats aren't doing to make that happen. But as that vibe shift, or as the shift change, as that pendulum does shift, these guys will come right back the other way. I have no doubt in my mind. They are chasing profits. They are chasing access. They are chasing ROI, which some might say is good, but that's what's going on here. That's all that's going on.
I mean, listen, I don't disagree. Bradley, finally here to you here, and then we got to get to our last segment, which we'll do quick. Bradley, you've worked for years as a VC. You're pivoting a bit, if I understand it. You're once again offering kind of advice in return for equity, kind of ditching the traditional VC model. But I wonder kind of what has inspired this. Is it anything in the political environment, or how do you see the kind of that model changing a bit?
I mean, the main reason is, so look, I've been a tech investor for about 15 years now. Started by working with companies like Uber and Clear in taking equity in return for helping them with their regulatory stuff. And then I started investing outside capital, and I raised my first venture capital fund in 2016. I've done 3 funds now, about $300 million under management. And now that I've had the experience of both, what I've realized is when I was doing equity for services, I made more money. I focused on the thing that I'm interested in, which is how do you legalize disruptive technologies, and all the stuff in finance that just some people might like, but not me. Fundraising, board seats, compliance, portfolio construction, LPs, like I don't like any of that stuff. And I realized, hey, I used to have a system that made more money doing the stuff I liked and not doing the stuff I don't like. But I think to your point, JD, the other reason why is, to me, in a world of AI where none of the rules have been written yet, having a seat at the table to figure out what should and shouldn't happen, and then being able to say, I own directly equity in these companies. I don't have to return 80 cents of the profits to my LPs. I can keep all of it. To me, it's far more exciting. And that's why, by the way, we talked about the money I put into mobile voting. That's what lets me do this stuff, right? I didn't grow up with a lot of money. I worked in government. I didn't make a lot of money. And then I started doing various forms of tech investing, and I did. And I have taken the vast amount of majority of money that I have made, and I've put it back into the things that I care about, like mobile voting, like campaigns around the country to mandate school meals, like the bookstore that I own on the Lower East Side that loses tons of money, or whatever it is. And so to me, this is the right approach. And I don't think that everyone has to sort of deploy outside capital if it turns out that it's not the most economically efficient way to proceed.
That's an awesome idea. Also, I didn't know the bookstore thing. Raj, hold on 1 second. So we got to get to our last segment because we're running late on time, and I'm grateful you guys are hanging out. All right, time now for our fan favorite segment.
Say something.
Nice. Sponsored by the good folks at Public Tusk.com. Bradley Tusk, I'm going to start with you. I'm going to give Raj our last word here of the show. Bradley, either anything for Donald Trump or Elon Musk in this orbit are these things that frustrate you. The spirit of this segment is to say something nice with any and all in the arena of debate you disagree with. Give me something nice about the president, Bradley.
I believe that he has the opportunity to absolutely make history by giving us the kind of immigration reform that we need. And I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt that, so I think, and I bet Raj agrees with this, we need millions and millions and millions of new legal immigrants here to fill massive holes in our economy and pay taxes so we can afford to give people Social Security and Medicare. And I agree with Trump that the only way to get to that is to first secure the borders and crack down on illegal immigration. And so while I don't necessarily agree with everything Trump is doing around it, if what he's doing now is followed by Nixon goes to China and he is able to say, here's how immigration should work, and I do think he'd have the credibility to do that, that would be amazing. I wouldn't hold my breath and put money on that happening, but it is my hope.
Love that, and I really do appreciate that. The Nixon go to China line is really good. Raj, how about for you? You've talked about what Democrats need to do moving forward, but for right now, this is the GOP's world. Raj, give me something nice.
Well, I want to plug work I'm doing, which is to try to ban cell phones in schools. I applaud Governor Hochul. She's been a courageous leader on it. About 15 states are getting active on it. And it ties into a larger issue about online safety generally. And there's a national piece of legislation that passed the Senate 91-1, the Kids Online Safety Act. And I'll say something nice about Elon Musk and Donald Trump Jr., who tweeted in support of that really landmark legislation. And it's a very, very important thing to do. We have a terrible mental health crisis in this country, especially for teen girls. I'm the father of 2 teenage daughters and very involved in those PTAs and so on. So I'm very, very hopeful that there is a national both meeting of the minds of a grassroots movement and state legislature and governors and parents. And then frankly, this president and this White House understanding the importance of starting to regulate this unbelievable, powerful, addictive media environment we're in with these algorithmic feeds. And I'm very hopeful, actually, that as we move forward over the next 1 to 2 years, we're actually going to see substantial reform on that front.
Dare I say a bit of common threads between Raj Goyle and Donald Trump Jr. on an issue like this. I love it. That's what we're all about. It's a very important spirit of the show that we continue that. And I'm super grateful to both of you. Obviously, tech went down. But to be fair, I think that's Doge targeting the show. I think Elon Musk and them came through and they're like, we're cutting the power. Common Threads is just too powerful a platform, but we're going to be back next Thursday. I'm very grateful to both of you. That's Raj Goyle, Democratic strategist, tech entrepreneur, former Kansas State representative, and Bradley Tusk, VC, political strategist, philanthropist, author. Vote with your phone. Bradley, Raj, let's do it again soon. Thank you, gentlemen.
Sounds
Thanks
great.
for hanging out a few.
Great, JD. Thank you, and Raj. I'll see you next week.
Yeah, see ya. Take care. See you guys.
See you guys.
Hell yeah, that's
Bye-bye.
what it's all about. Look at that show. Give it up for those guys, huh? Pew, pew, pew.
Great guess.
Okay.
Great guess.
That was awesome. Very grateful to both those dudes. Also, shout out this comment from, I think it's a Swamp Bug. Shout out to Bradley Tusk. Love his mindset. The Bradley Tusk mindset. That would be his follow-up book right there. I love that. I would read a mindset book from both Raj and Bradley. I thought they were terrific. In honor of USA Hockey, can JD, as a Devils fan, say something nice about, and I'm having a hard time reading those last 2 words in that, so I think the answer is no. No, you know what? Listen, you know what? Mike Richter, you could argue, is responsible for the only championship that the New York Rangers have since the FDR administration. So that's a backhanded way of saying the Rangers are kind of trash. Historically, they're trash. Probably always going to be trash. But the great Mike Richter, they got to hoist the cup in '94, and that man was a big part of the reason why. Also, yes, we do have USA Hockey squaring off against tonight's Finland, right? Yep. 4 nations face off. God, I am so hyped up. Could you get a right to recall for a later date? No.
It's about mobile voting.
Mobile voting. Got it. No further need to start tough impeachment efforts. Just update your previous vote to remove online. Call it a boomerang ballot. I like that. I love the idea. The whole mobile voting thing is very cool for a society that is. Although it's also interesting, though, that Raj was kind of like, we're trying to move away from phones in school. But for good or for bad, like, these things are an extension of who we are and what we have. And
just don't let the kids vote.
don't let the kids vote.
In school.
In school.
Yeah.
Correct. Well, in college, they're old enough. but not like your school. I voted for college in the first time. 08 was my first election. So those were killer guests. Was there anything big that we didn't get to? No, I think the only thing I think was tariffs for these guys. But today we did have an announcement from Trump announcing reciprocal tariffs, an eye-for-eye response to countries that have import duties on U.S. products. Trump calls it the only fair way to trade. Raj had some great comments on tariffs tonight.
Yeah.
He really crushed
But
it.
this announcement was boring as hell, so I'm glad we skipped it.
It was kind of we say nothing burger. Yeah. It's like a nothing burger because the White House was like, this is the big one. This is the big tariff announcement. And then you actually kind of watched it and you're like, all right, so you're announcing that there might be tariffs down the line type of thing. A little bit of this and that. But that's what we're in for, man. You're in for like every single day you have to, if you're in this space, it's just dizzying. But like you kind of have to pay attention and just hope that you could do your best to figure out what this guy's trying to do.
We'll always find something else to get us excited about.
Are you on the mic right now? Can the viewers hear you?
I think they can hear me a little bit.
Oh, the guest, yeah, killer.
To their peril.
I'm just making sure.
We got thousands of viewers across.
Killer,
on Rumble.
crushed it on Rumble. Shout out to everyone watching on Rumble.
Yeah, and shouts to anyone who stuck around for the full hour. I mean, we had some tech issues, but I'm glad that we were able to get those squared away. And we've had really great viewership, about 50,000 per episode on Rumble, and we really appreciate our fans on there. So just wanted to give them a little shout.
Thank you for saying that. I didn't want to say any of that because I don't like anyone who watches this show. I don't give a fuck if you watch or not. No, that's very kind. And it's absolutely true. That I feel like it was from the first show of 2025.
Yeah,
we just kind of had this like switch, and we're like, oh damn, this is like little like big boy TV, but it's not TV. It's like we just did this shit ourselves.
Rumble likes us. They really like us.
No, it's awesome. So we're very grateful for all that. So obviously we're gonna have a million news cycles between now and next. Oh wait, we're off next Thursday. Programming.
Yeah.
Aren't we?
First break in a while.
First break in a while.
First break for a while. So we'll be back at it weekly right after next Thursday. But other than that, you expect us every week.
27.
So we're off for a fortnight. Dan, is that right? A fortnight is 2 weeks?
That's right.
So we're off for a fortnight.
Yes,
Correct. Okay, awesome. So we will not have a new show on Thursday.
It's 20 days, actually.
A fortnight is 20 days? It's not 2 weeks? God damn. See, the original idea for doing this and part of the show is like, what are all the things I get wrong?
Oh, no, you're right.
What?
14 days.
A fortnight is 14 days.
Yeah, fort. Yeah.
Oh, fort. Got it.
14
Oh, I see. With the dances, too, on Fortnite. Okay, so we're off for next week, but we will be back on Thursday, February 27th. That's a million news cycles between now and then, for sure. The entire state of the republic may look entirely different 2 weeks from now. We'll see. All right. Who lives in a pineapple under the sea? Folks, it's been an awesome show. Very special thanks to Raj Goyle. He was terrific, making his first appearance on the show, and the great Bradley Tusk for coming down. We are off next week. We'll be back the 27th. Good talk. See you out there. See you soon.